1959, the island nation of Cuba was thrown into spiritual darkness. Cut off from the global church, the presence of God continued to glow in the hearts of a small group of believers. Now, 55 years later, the light of the gospel burns brightly, not from the gospel being sent into Cuba, but from the supernatural revival flamed into a passionate fire within the people of Cuba itself. The revival, first ignited in the 1990s, led to large meetings with hundreds in attendance. Authorities, seeking to disperse the large crowds, allowed the formation of house churches. The crowds did disperse, but instead of weakening the church, it sent church-planting families across the nation into hundreds of small barrios where house churches were planted. Young professionals, educators, lawyers, and engineers, being called by the Holy Spirit, left their professions and the comforts of living in a large city to go and plant house churches, often in primitive situations. These young church planters moved their families into wood slat buildings, half of which is used as a church, the remainder half a small living space. Many of these houses have dirt floors. Almost all have leaky roofs. Restrooms are non-existent, a latrine or outhouse having to serve the needs of family and congregation. These young pastors are laying the very lives and futures of their families upon the altar as they answer the call of God, never complaining, never asking for help, but merely living out their faith and calling each and every day.
Me gradué de ingeniero civil y estuve trabajando en Guantánamo.
I was working in Guantánamo as a civil engineer when I met my wife, Mariluz. We were married, and when we returned from our honeymoon, our pastor asked us to consider planting a church in one of the barrios outside of the city. God has been speaking to my heart about serving Him since my days at the university. Mariluz and I immediately began to travel back and forth to the barrio to minister. 1 year later, we left our jobs, packed up a few belongings, and then taking a newly born son, we moved here. It was very rough when we arrived. We began to preach in this place, and souls began to be saved.
We're here in a typical house church in one of the barrios of Cuba. The church planters in these places need your help. For $5,000, we can replace this structure with a formal building, block walls, a concrete floor, a roof that doesn't leak, and a real bathroom. Can you imagine the impact that will make on a barrio here in Cuba? We need your church to come together and provide one of these churches. What can you do to help your church do that today?